Cynthia, welcome. You have ascended to national prominence in the last week or so. Tell the people what's been going on.
Well, I don't know how to explain this except that there are some people on the left who get offended when they hear right ideology expressed, and not to offend anybody, that really grieves me. I'm a nice person, and I love everybody on the left and the right, but can't we have an intelligent debate?
Just the other day, well, a couple of times in the last week, Keith Olbermann has mentioned your name, and we've got just a little snippet. Can we play that very quickly, Cynthia?
If you need to, go ahead.
Here's what Keith Olbermann, that miserable man, had to say.
Cynthia Davis, who represents the 19th District in Missouri State House of Representatives. The gold that is found off the beaten path. Representative Davis provides a few commentaries to a news release about the state's summer food program, which keeps feeding disadvantaged kids even while school is out. In short, Representative Davis does not get it. She writes, who's buying dinner? Who's getting paid to serve the meal? Churches and other nonprofits can do this at no cost to the taxpayer if it is warranted. Bigger governmental programs take away our connectedness to the human family, our brotherhood, and our need for one another. Anyone under 18 can be eligible. Can't they get a job during the summer by the time they're 16? Hunger can be a positive motivator. What is wrong with the idea of getting a job so you can get better meals? Tip. If you work for McDonald's, they will feed you for free during your break. Missouri State Representative Cynthia, are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Davis, today's worst person in the world.
Now, Michael, we've had in this studio, we've had Albert Pujols, the greatest baseball player in America today. We've talked to Karl Rove. We've talked to people with the Obama campaign. We've had congressmen, U.S. senators, any manner of people, but we have never had in this studio the worst person in the world. Cynthia, your reaction to Keith Olbermann?
Well, all I have to say is that doesn't sound like a very nice thing for him to say.
Indeed. And you actually put out a newsletter very recently where you outlined your response to this in some detail. I thought it was particularly good. Share some of the thoughts that were contained in that newsletter.
Well, I'm all about strengthening families and empowering parents. And it's not, the question is not what shall we feed children, it's who should feed the children and how shall they be fed. So, I mean, I'm all about what we can do to adopt public policies that make sense and that are going to strengthen the families. And I don't see that growing government bigger is going to solve this problem.
So, Representative, you can understand how people would interpret when you say that hunger would be a good motivator and why are we buying lunches for these people in the summertime? These are people who don't have access to food normally. You would understand how people might think, hey, that's a little hypocritical from a person who's talking about family values.
You're wondering how I can understand how somebody on the left who makes his living from mocking Republicans would want to take an opportunity to distort this and put my comments out of context. Because, I mean, think about your own life. Were you ever a 16-year-old boy once, and did it ever occur to you maybe you'd like to
In fact,
be
18 years ago today, he was a 16-year-old boy.
And that's the American way. And that comment was only made questioning why it goes up to such a high level when people by then ought to start assuming a little bit of personal responsibility. And, you know, the plight of those in poverty is very tragic, and it does behoove us, all of us, everywhere, in every sector, to ask what can we do that will strengthen the family. I happen to think that growing government bigger and using poverty as an excuse to grow government bigger and further intrude into families is not the right answer.
Well, there is Representative Davis. So we're visiting with Representative Cynthia Davis. She's had quite a week in the national press with Keith Olbermann. So here's your opportunity. If you had Keith Olbermann sitting here, what would you want to say to him?
Well, the first thing I would say is he does not understand who he's even talking to, because I am the one who cares about family values and compassion and doing what we need to do to make the community better, not to grow big government. So I am a mother of 7 children. I know I've lived with poverty. I've lived through everything we're talking about. I've been in the trenches. I've been there, done that. And so I come to this debate from firsthand personal experience, and I'm a huge believer in education. And what I've done is I actually went to the WIC program last summer and volunteered to teach a cooking class, so that it's all about empowering parents. Now, maybe Keith Olbermann doesn't understand what it's like to be a father of 7. Maybe he has never lived with poverty, and maybe he's never had to deal with some of the stresses that I've lived through. But you know what? Maybe he should do a little research before he opens his mouth.
She is the mother of 7. She's also a 4-term state representative from St. Charles County, Missouri, in the O'Fallon area. Many of you in our listening audience may very well be represented in Jefferson City by Cynthia Davis. Your term limits, we have an 8-year term limit in Missouri that was passed by the voters back in 1992. Your term limits come to an end next November of 2010. You can't run for re-election. Do you have political aspirations beyond your current service?
Well, before I was a state representative, I was a city alderman, and therein comes some of my championing values of local government. And so if you combine local plus state, it does add up to 15 years. I'm grateful for every day. I love taking care of people, and it's a calling. It is what we have to do to make the community better. And going back to this poverty issue, that's why I feel so convinced that local government has the answers to our problems, not bigger government. And
so you were a member, you were an alderman in O'Fallon. You've been a state representative. There's been some talk, I've heard out there, that you were looking at perhaps a statewide office. Is that something that's in the offing for Cynthia Davis?
Well, you never know. All I know is I bought myself a pair of cowboy boots, and I'm learning how to say Missouri.
Well, yeah, Missouri and Missouri. Well, that's exactly right. So, mother of 7, how old are your kids?
Well, my oldest is 27.
You got to be kidding me. You've got a 27-year-old?
Yes, I do. And I've got my youngest one is 6. He was born my first session. I got to Jefferson City. He is what they call a campaign souvenir.
Yeah, I think that's what I was in my house too, but there was no campaigns going on. Well, that's great. And before you got into politics, what did you work? What kind of profession did you have? What were you doing then?
Well, my husband and I own Back to Basics Christian Bookstore in O'Fallon, and we've run that for 20 years. And there is where I come up with my sympathy for the entrepreneur, for people in business, and for people who have to eke out a living during a harsh economy, especially when government is considering raising taxes on the business people.
And you, I guess, never in your wildest dreams, when you got elected to the Missouri General Assembly in what's your district, 19th Legislative District, you probably never imagined that your name twice in 1 week would be mentioned on national television on MSNBC by somebody like Keith Olbermann.
Well, I'm proud of the fact that we're talking about personal responsibility. I'm proud that we're talking about family values. And I'm proud that we get to talk about limited government. Those are all of our favorite subjects for the Republican Party. And I believe we're the party that actually has better ideas. I believe we can solve our problems in a local manner. And I'm real confident that if we can have a discussion based on logic rather than slinging insults, we will achieve more progress. So somebody actually called my house yesterday and talk about how uncivil the left can be. My daughter answered the phone and said I was not home, and he said, "Well, would you give your mom a message for me? Would you tell her that tell your mother that she's an idiot?" And so my daughter thanked him for his comments, and then they said goodbye. So, I mean, I don't like this childishness. I don't like being mean-spirited. I think we can talk about things logically and have a good, rigorous, intelligent debate.
Intelligent debate is extremely important. Term limits are in the news of late. They were passed by the voters in 1992. Over 30 states have adopted term limits. The Missouri Republican Speaker of the House has said recently that he believes we might want to rethink term limits. You're a term-limited legislator. Do you have thoughts on term limits? Are you for them? Do you think they ought to be revised? Do you think they ought to be abolished? What's your feeling about term limits?
If only we had inserted one word, consecutive, I think it could have been more livable, because that breaks the power if you take a turn out for 2 years. Even when I tell people in other states that I'm permanently stricken from ever running for this office again, they think that's a little harsh, because what happens if you're good? You have to do what you've got to do to try and make the world a better place, and I'm going to find another way to make things better wherever I go.
Well, Michael and I wish you well in that pursuit, Cynthia Davis, State Representative Cynthia Davis. Though she be stricken from office, she's still going to be a resident of our community.